Well, it looks like our rainy season is on its way. It's been a rainy day the last few days, and I'm stuck inside. There really isn't any work I need to do outdoors. I do have a customer I need to take care of, but the problem is it's an outside job and I can't do it. It's an electrical job and it's no hurry. It's for an RV connection. So I'm just going to wait until this weather improves. Now, of course, it's a lot cooler, which is an advantage, but when it's raining, can't do much. So anyway, I decided that between the rain showers, when there's a break, I was going to try to fix my van. Now, when I drive around with a van, let's say I have to go and deal with the customer, or I have to get supplies or anything like that, it becomes a real problem when it rains. Why is that? Well, because when it rains, considering I have hot and humid weather, the inside of the van gets hot, it's humid, and the windows fog up. So I can't even see where I'm going. Then I have to take a towel and try to wipe it down while I'm driving. And in Miami, that can be a life or death situation. Now, obviously you can't open the windows when it's raining. That's not going to work. And the rain is always cooler than the air. So that's going to cause condensation on the windows. In fact, the windows on my house are so full of condensation, I can't even see outside. But that's because I have air conditioning inside. The condensation always takes place on the hot side. So when you're driving, the rain, the outside is cool, and the inside of the vehicle is hot. Because you got the engine, you got yourself, plus you got residual heat from just driving around. And there is only one way to stop that, and that's with air conditioning. Now, if you've ever worked on air conditioning systems, you might recognize some of these components that I've taken out of the van. I'm sure most people recognize this one, which is a compressor. And as you can see, it is kind of corroded. It's old. I think it's been changed. You may not recognize this little plastic component, but I'm going to explain it to you. Now, when we look over here, we're going to start on the right-hand side. This is what's known as the evaporator. The evaporator is where liquid refrigerant enters through a tube that's right over here. Goes into this tube. You can see. Well, maybe you can see it. There it is. And that's why this plastic item is present. Now, refrigerant enters as a liquid, and just like in a spray can, like if you had, for example, a paint can has a liquid in it under pressure. And when you press the trigger, out comes the paint. Now, you can't really feel it, but anytime you go from a pressurized liquid to a gas, it actually takes heat, because to go from a liquid to a gas requires heat. Just like if you put water on your stove and you boiled it until it made steam. Now, on the spray can, you probably know you have one of these little things. It's a small hole that the liquid comes out of. This is also known as an orifice, O-R-F-I-C-E. And when it's placed on the can, there's a valve that goes with it, and then when you push down on it, out comes the paint. All right, that's what this is. Now, because it's tubular shaped, it's called an orifice tube. And in here, you have a screen. Now, when I took the system apart, I found that this had a lot of black material on it. And what I did, I rinsed it off into a jar of solvent. Then I took that leftover and I put it in acetone. And when I look at it under light, there's a bunch of little sparkly things in there. It looks almost like metallic paint. Well, that tells me there was a catastrophic failure in this system at one time. Now remember, this was a shuttle bus. I think it was at the airport for many years. By the time that I got a hold of the van, the thing had been rigged. But we did get the air conditioning working, although not that great. The compressor was always a little bit weak. Now, I'm the kind of person that's all or nothing. I'm not going to fix something unless I can do it right. Thankfully, I got paid and I have enough food. So I had about $300 I could work with, which is kind of rare. But I decided to get a few things for my van. Now, first of all, the alternator, I need to get parts for that. I need to get a so-called clock spring for the steering column because the airbag doesn't work and I have no horn. Turn signals work fine. So I got that and I still had some money left over. So I decided to go over online and I went to the Rock Auto website and I purchased brand new evaporator, this canister, which is known as a dryer, accumulator, or receiver dryer, and a compressor. But I also got the other component you don't see here, which is the condenser that goes on the front of the vehicle. That's where the actual heat transfer takes place. Now, as I explained before, this orifice tube is going to take the pressurized refrigerant, just like if it was in a spray can, spray it, but instead of into the air, into this network of passages. Now, when it's sprayed in here, it runs through these. Air is blown through from a fan. That air contains heat. When that heat is absorbed by the metal, it causes the material inside of here to evaporate. So this is known as the evaporator. Now, on the other side of the evaporator, you're going to have this tube over here, which is known as the suction side. And it goes over here to this canister, which is known as a receiver dryer or accumulator. And what happens is gas passes into here. There's a pressure switch over here that can tell the system whether it's getting too much pressure. Some of them are high, some are low. If I remember correctly, this one shows when it's too low, when the compressor is trying to suck out refrigerant and there's not enough of it, which means your system is running low on refrigerant. So this is your low switch, and it's connected to the electrical circuit, which is connected to the compressor. Now, the compressor is the heart of the system because what it does, it takes this refrigerant vapor after it's come through the evaporator, and it pulls it in through a suction line, compresses it, which is squeezes it together, and then it comes out of a smaller line, which then goes to the condenser, which is something like this, but it's outside and it's in front of the vehicle. So whenever you take a gas and you release it, it gets cooler because it takes heat. But in order to get the gas back into a liquid, it's going to have to give up heat. So what you have is a fan or just the front of the car driving, flowing air over that condenser. And then that refrigerant vapor turns into liquid refrigerant. But the secret is the compressor can only compress the gas. If liquid went into a compressor, since you can't compress a liquid, you would break it. The shaft would snap off or something internal would be destroyed. That can cause total failure of the compressor. That usually causes the compressor to lock up. Now, if you'll notice, the compressor is composed of several pieces itself. The compressor body, and then you have this sort of pulley system. Now, here we have a pulley that's connected to the serpentine belt in the vehicle, and it's on a bearing, so it can rotate freely. But you'll notice there's this outside piece. Now, if you look at it, you'll see there's grooves in it. It's like two pieces of metal. The reason they do that is because hidden behind this, there's an electromagnet. That's what this, well, I got it upside down. There's a connector right here. See this little connector with two wires in it? This connects to an electromagnet. When power is applied to this, a magnet pulls this inward. So it attaches, and then when this rotates, it causes a compressor to rotate. But when it's not engaged, it just spins freely. But when the magnet pulls in, it spins a compressor. Now, this compressor is old, and it's been sitting in a system which has leaked out for quite some time. One thing you'll notice is that if you try to rotate the compressor manually, it sounds doesn't sound really healthy. And it kind of sticks. On the back of the compressor, you have holes. You'll have a big hole and a smaller hole. The large hole is known as the suction side, and the smaller hole is the pressure side. If you put your finger over the hole and you turn the compressor, this should make pressure. But this one, it doesn't. This compressor is dead. And on the suction side, the same thing. Completely dead. Does nothing. So this is basically a piece of junk. And if you smell it, it smells like the oil is burned. So evidently what happened, now you'll notice there's a label on here, and also on the bottom, or somewhere on the side, there's another label. This tells me that this was replaced. And again, being a shuttle van, you could be sure that as soon as the air conditioning didn't work, the clients, the customers would be complaining. So evidently what they did, they went ahead and replaced the compressor. I don't know if they replaced this dryer unit. I mean, they may have. It's hard to tell. It probably was. Although it still has the little factory convoluted tubing on there, so maybe, maybe not. But when I looked at the evaporator, I saw that it's original. It's never been replaced. It still has this foam material that Ford put on there. Also notice at the bottom of it, you can see here, see how this is kind of darkened? This is an indication that at one time there was some type of oil, which was probably a refrigerant leak. So this evaporator is probably junk. I haven't tested it yet, but I'm not going to bother. This is going straight to the scrap pile because I purchased a new one. Also, the airflow in the van was kind of low. And if you look at it, you can see these fins are pretty dirty. Now, some genius way back when tried to cut a couple of holes in the evaporator case and I guess try to wash this out. But again, laziness and foolishness. So now I have to patch that up somehow until I can find a junk van to take a good one out of. But when it comes down to it, I had to spend money to do this the right way. And what I will do, I'll try to get it on video as well. I've disassembled the whole system. I'm cleaning. I'm going to reuse the existing hoses because the one hose that I fixed, you can't get. It's discontinued. I would have to custom make it. Now, thankfully, I do automotive air conditioning as a side job. So I have a crimping set. I have fittings. I'm very good at servicing these systems. But what would it cost to get a mechanic to do it? I have to spend, it's going to cost me about $300 just in parts. Plus the labor, you know, I could imagine it'd probably be $1,000 or more. It would cost more money to fix the air conditioning than the whole van is worth. So that is a problem. But on the other hand, it's a pretty good experience because the more of these systems you do, the better it gets. And I was inspired by that simply because I got this Robinair refrigeration recycling machine. So I've been putting this off for a while. And of course, after riding a bike for 2 months, just having a running vehicle is a treat. But now my van is out of commission and it's raining, so I can't use the bicycle. And I'm going to have to wait. Otherwise, I'll have to put this old compressor back in just to be able to run the belt. But also, I'm getting the alternator parts. So if all goes well, when the parts get here by this weekend, hopefully by next week, I will be able to have a van that doesn't drain the battery, a van that has air conditioning, and although it still doesn't really have a good transmission, that's in the future. So it's just, you know, do the best you can, right? And I'm going to try to make a video. There's a lot of videos out there, obviously, on YouTube about how to service air conditioning systems. But for those of you that are watching, you might find this educational. Even if you never work on an air conditioning system yourself, at least you could understand the basics. And when your mechanic is trying to sell you what they need to do, you might have a better idea. Now, one thing I want to mention to you is that if you think you're getting ripped off, you may not be. In a truck or van, most of them have the air conditioning components easily accessible from under the hood. The van is more difficult because of the way it's built. Pickup trucks are the easiest. And I'll show you in the future, when it doesn't rain, where this evaporator is located. But in many passenger cars, you have to take the entire dashboard apart. Sometimes you have to take half the interior out just to replace this stupid thing. And that is a problem. Also, in today's vehicles, the compressor is usually stuck on the bottom of the engine. Whereas all the old junk I drive around in, it has it up top. Whether it's my 69 or 70 Dodge Chargers, my 1990 F-250, my 98 van, they all have it on top, which makes it a lot easier. But why would I waste this money and time on this old van? The reason is this. The 7.3 Power Stroke is running really well. And even though I do have a transmission problem, it's a heavy-duty E350. The van will be able to, I've been able to move some pretty heavy things in it. I can move my Bobcat with it. The van can do a lot for me. So it's going to be worth it for me. I got to do body work. I'm going to have to take the windshield out. I got to cut part of the roof off and weld on a piece. It's also great practice because, as you know, I'm the Mopar guy. And I have several Chargers that are just basically stored, that are basket cases, that I'd like to fix up. And the more practice I get with my welding and filling it in, using lead solder, whatever it is, the better it is. So if I'm going to take time and fix up my truck or my van, that'll give me even better skills when it comes time to take on those 69 and 70 Chargers, which are my all-time favorite cars and the reason why I started the channel in the first place. So anyway, this is an update from Rick. And again, I know this isn't anything related to diet, but my life is not controlled by what I eat. I try to control my life by what I can do. See you later.